They said Africans couldn't have built this, but the stones say otherwise. Deep in the heart of southern Africa, a ruined city rises from the earth, massive stone walls, perfectly fitted without a drop of mortar, stretching into the sky like echoes from another time. For centuries, Great Zimbabwe stood as proof of African brilliance, but colonizers refused to believe it. They claimed it was the work of lost white tribes, foreign traders, or biblical figures. Anything but Africans. But this city wasn't a legend, it was the capital of a thriving civilization, a hub of gold, trade, and power. Today, its ruins whisper the truth louder than ever. Africa was never in the dark. The world just refused to see the light. Welcome to the city that shattered a lie. Welcome to Great Zimbabwe. Long before borders, before the scramble for Africa, before the world had even named it, Zimbabwe, a city, was rising. Built not by legend, but by brilliance. In the southeastern hills of Africa, surrounded by gentle savannas and rocky outcrops, a civilization quietly carved its legacy into the earth. Great Zimbabwe didn't rise with conquest. It rose with intention, with stone. Around the 11th century, a group of Bantu-speaking people known as the Shona began constructing something no one had ever seen on the continent, a city made entirely of stone, built without mortar, without colonial tools, and without the influence of foreign powers. They didn't need them. The builders of Great Zimbabwe were master engineers. Using only local granite and hammers made from harder stone, they shaped blocks with smooth edges and stacked them in interlocking formations that have stood for nearly 1,000 years. The walls weren't just functional, they were graceful, curving in arcs and flowing with the landscape like the rhythm of a drum. Even today, the precision of their dry stone walling confounds architects. How did they do it without steel, without levels, without any written blueprints? The answer: ancestral knowledge passed from generation to generation. A legacy of ingenuity written in stone. But Great Zimbabwe was more than walls, it was alive. At its height, the city bustled with an estimated 15,000 to 20,000 people. Traders, artisans, priests, farmers, warriors, and royalty moved through its stone corridors. The air rang with the clang of metalworkers crafting iron tools and spears. Cattle, a symbol of wealth and status, grazed in the surrounding fields. Music, dance, and ceremony echoed from its high towers. This was the heart of a powerful kingdom, one that had its eyes on the horizon. Gold was the engine. The surrounding rivers and hills were rich with it, and the people of Great Zimbabwe mined it, melted it, shaped it, and traded it. From the city's stone enclosures, goods flowed outward, reaching the Swahili trading cities along Africa's east coast, then sailing further to Arabia, Persia, India, and even China. Archaeologists have uncovered Chinese pottery shards, Persian glass, and Arab coins buried in the ruins. These were not gifts, they were evidence of exchange. Africa wasn't isolated. It was central, and presiding over this kingdom was a sacred symbol when still etched into the soul of a nation today. The Zimbabwe bird, perched atop stone pillars. This bird wasn't just decorative, it was spiritual. A link between the living and the ancestors. A silent guardian watching over the city's kings, known as the Mambo, who ruled with both power and divine authority. But perhaps the most awe-inspiring structure was the Great Enclosure, the largest ancient building in sub-Saharan Africa. It served no military purpose. There were no enemies to keep out. It was built for ceremony, mystery, and perhaps to echo the greatness of the people who gathered within. It stood as a monument, not to war, but to culture, identity, and unity. The outer walls, some over 10 meters high, enclose an inner tower whose purpose still puzzles archaeologists. Was it a shrine? A palace? A royal retreat? No one knows for sure, but its silence speaks volumes. Great Zimbabwe was not a kingdom built overnight. It developed over centuries, flourishing through innovation, trade, and deeply rooted cultural systems. It was a beacon in a world that has often underestimated Africa. And long before a modern nation adopted its name, Great Zimbabwe had already written itself into history, not in ink, but in stone.
In the late 19th century, European explorers and colonizers began to stumble upon the towering stone walls and intricate passageways of Great Zimbabwe. They were stunned. The city didn't match the racist assumptions they held about Africa. Assumptions that painted the continent as primitive, tribal, and incapable of advanced civilization. And so, when they saw the grandeur of Great Zimbabwe, they made a choice. They refused to believe it was African. Writers, archaeologists, missionaries, and politicians began crafting a different story, one that stole the brilliance of Great Zimbabwe from the people who built it. They claimed it had to be the work of outsiders, the Phoenicians, the Arabs, the Hebrews, even survivors from the mythical city of Atlantis, anything but the Shona people. Anything but black Africans. One of the most infamous voices in this rewriting of history was Cecil Rhodes, the British imperialist whose name once graced the country itself, Rhodesia. When the ruins were studied under colonial supervision, any evidence linking the site to local Africans was suppressed or destroyed. In 1905, archaeologist David Randomakiva concluded that the structures were of purely African origin. His findings were dismissed. It wasn't until the mid-20th century that honest archaeology began to undo the damage, but by then, the lie had already infected textbooks, museums, and global consciousness. And this wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a calculated erasure. Because to admit that Africans built Great Zimbabwe would mean admitting that African societies were sophisticated, that African rulers governed kingdoms, that African engineers shaped empires, and that colonization didn't civilize Africa, it interrupted it. Even today, echoes of this lie persist. Some school systems barely mention Great Zimbabwe. Others frame it as a minor curiosity instead of what it truly was. One of the most important archaeological sites on the African continent. A city that demands not pity, but respect. But the stones never forgot. And now, neither do we. Though Great Zimbabwe was abandoned around the 15th century, its spirit never died. Its walls may have fallen silent, but its story still echoes in the heart of every Zimbabwean and in the soul of Africa. When Zimbabwe gained independence from colonial rule in 19, the nation chose to reclaim its heritage by taking on the name of the ancient city. Zimbabwe, meaning House of Stone, was more than a name. It was a declaration, a powerful statement that the people of this land had built civilizations long before they were colonized. That greatness did not begin with outsiders, it began here. The symbol of the Zimbabwe bird, once carved into soapstone and perched atop the city's ancient pillars, now adorns the national flag, currency, and government buildings. It is more than a national emblem, it is a call to remembrance. A reminder that African identity is not something to be apologized for or reconstructed from the margins. It is rooted in greatness, strength, and vision. And yet, beyond the symbolism lies an even deeper truth. Great Zimbabwe still has secrets to tell. Archaeologists continue to uncover layers of life, trade, and ritual hidden within its stone walls. Oral histories passed down by the Shona people still breathe life into the ruins, and modern African scholars, no longer silenced by colonial filters, are retelling the story not as outsiders speculating, but as descendants remembering. Today, the ruins of Great Zimbabwe are a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Tourists come to marvel, historians come to learn, but for many Africans, standing among those walls feels like a homecoming, a reconnection with a past that was buried but never lost, a confrontation with centuries of silence and the decision to break it. Because these stones are not just rocks, they are memory, they are defiance, they are proof. Proof that Africa was never a blank page waiting to be written on. It was already a book full of wisdom, glory, and story. Proof that what was once dismissed as legend was, in fact, legacy. And proof that when we reclaim our history, we rediscover our power. So, the next time someone says Africa had no cities, no kings, no greatness, point them to the walls. The stones will answer for you. If this story opened your eyes, don't let it stop here. Share this video with someone who's never heard of Great Zimbabwe. Comment below what part of this story moved you the most. Subscribe for more untold African stories that deserve a voice. And together, let's rebuild what was broken, one truth at a time. Because history isn't just about the past. It's about who we become when we finally remember who we are.